Hi, this is Jesse, and it's my first time dealing with this snowblower and replacing this gearbox assembly. Here's a snowblower here. We're going to try to take apart the bolts holding the gearbox together. We saw on the internet how they sell kits with a new gear and some washers that possibly we could order and replace, and that was not the case, as you'll see later. Here we've got the bolts off and we're prying apart the gearbox. You can see the teeth on the gear are all worn. There's a lot of metal shavings out there too, so definitely it's the gear that needs to be replaced. We're got the snow blower on its face here, removing the bolt that holds our pulley onto the drive shaft there that runs through the into the housing, turns the blower and the auger there. Here's the whole system from the outside, and what we're looking to do is actually, once the pulley is loose and the bolt comes out, we'll just go ahead and pull the whole auger, drive, and thrower out through the front. As you see here, it all came right out. There's the thrower in the rear, and you've got our augers left and right, along with our flange bushings on either side. There's our blower, those are our augers, and there's our broken gearbox. This is the pulley here. That was on the other side of the housing, holding the assembly together. Provided the motive force to turn everything. Here's the whole assembly pulled out and set on the table. There's our flange bushing. We're going to pull that out. And there's an auger. Careful with the augers. There are some plastic bushings inserts on each end. And we'll disassemble everything, trying to get everything out. And that's in preps to open up the housing and actually look at the gear completely. And there the gear housing is coming apart. And we see the worm drive come out, and that looks pretty clean. Looks like it has no issues. There, we'll slide our housing out, and there's the actual gear, along with the there you go, the lock nut that's in there, the lock key that's in there to hold everything in place. And you can see there's lots of shavings on the side. And we're going to tap out the gear and try to remove it from the shaft in preparation for replacing it. There you go, there's our part number. And there's our gear. It's kind of you see there that the teeth are pretty stripped and gone. And the operator, myself and the operator didn't have any clue of what was going on. As far as we knew, the snowblower kept working and was working well up until it just stopped. So obviously the gears were grinding, and we just weren't aware. Didn't hear it. There's a picture of the model number in case anyone else is doing it. When we went on the internet, we found that you cannot order parts for the internals of the gearbox. What you do is you order the whole assembly. So here's the old assembly, and here's the new assembly that came in a box. Alright, so now we're making preps to actually remove the blower from the old shaft. It's got two spiral pins holding it in place, and we're going to make an attempt to tap those out. As it turns out, the inner spiral pin was not going to come out willingly. So we took a grinder, and there's the spiral pin from the rear of the housing, and there's the ground out pin there. Turns out the grinder that we used was able to get into the area, get at the pin, and even though it cut a little bit of the plastic housing, we were still able to continue to use the housing. It was didn't make it unusable, so that was good. There is our grinder that we used to take the pin out, and let's see how we put it in there, and it kind of did make a cut into the plastic, but it wasn't a fatal cut. We're still able to reuse the blower. There again is the ground out pin, and there's the other opening where the rear spiral pin just it came right out as soon as we were able to push the thrower to the front down the shaft, exposing the rear spiral pin, and that just tapped right out, no problem. So we got one pin out of two. Here we are with the new gearbox assembly, and there's our blower, and we're going to go ahead and put that together. I picked up an extra spiral pin at Menards. They actually don't have a spiral pin. They call it a tension pin. It looks like a C when you're holding the pin and looking right at the end of it. We'll slide the thrower in all the way, and then we'll put the rear pin in. The thrower actually has a little groove where the rear pin will sit inside, and there's the tension pin that I got from Menards. I'm going to put that one in the rear, and we'll go ahead and tap that in. Wasn't going in very well, so I decided to put a little bit of a lubrication in there to try to get it in there a little smoother. That looks like it's almost all the way in. We'll slide back the thrower. There it is, right in the groove. And now we can put the old pin we were able to salvage from the other drive into the front of the thrower, and that will hold the thrower in place and keep it from moving. There's everything back together again. There's the front pin, the salvage front pin, and there's a little bit of the cut there that the grinder made, but like I said, it'll still work. The pin is still inside the groove, so it'll when the shaft turns, it'll turn the pin, and the pin is wedged in the plastic there, and it'll turn the whole blower assembly. So here it is, ready to be reassembled and then pushed into the snow blower from the front. And there's our snow blower in the front without the gear, the auger assembly installed. Here's the new gearbox assembly, and we're putting in the augers. Once again, the augers are stamped left and right, and that's facing the snowblower. So we're able to slide those in, and being careful, we put our black plastic spacer in up against the gearbox. Then we slide in our first auger on the correct side, and then the second auger, and we put our shear pins in, and then we put our clips in to keep those shear pins in place. And our flange bushing goes on next. Here's everything together. It's already assembled. The gearbox we didn't have to touch. It was all It all came as one piece, like I said earlier. There's our black spacer on the either side of the gearbox. And there's our flange bushing, and that's not quite the way it goes in. Put a little grease on there. There you go. And that's the correct way to install it. Put them both on. And we'll pick up the whole assembly. And we'll be ready to put it, there it is there, and we'll be ready to go ahead and put it into the snowblower from the front. There you have the snowblower tilted back. Put that right in the opening where it sits. Slide it all down. There you go. We'll put the screws in for the flange bushings on the housing there and there. We'll put them on there loosely. And line up the holes. Then once that's on there loosely, we'll turn the snowblower on its face so that we can gain access to that pulley assembly area. And there's our shaft, the other end of the shaft that went into the housing. There's our pulley. At the end of the shaft, it's got some teeth on it, and this pulley has some teeth on it as well, and they will mate together. We'll put our belt on there. The belt won't be under any tension, so you shouldn't have any issues putting it around the pulley and reinstalling the pulley itself. We tightened up the bolt, tightened up the bolt on our flange bushings, and here's the snowblower. It's running. We're going to test it and pull the lever there. There, the lever's pushed, and we get the augers spinning, and it looks like it's working okay. So once again, remember, safety first. Pull the spark plug wire. We don't want the engine to turn unexpectedly, and more importantly, we don't want our fingers in harm's way. So that was about $129, $125 worth of parts, and about an hour and a half worth of labor once you added everything together. We had the parts took about 2 days to get there, and that's actually after I went through a couple of other vendors. The original vendor couldn't get me one for about 4 to 5 days. They said they were on back order, and I called MTD also, I think, had it on back order, and then I actually called a different company on the internet, and they had them in stock, and that's why I was able to get it in 2 days. So there's our whole assembly. There's our flange bushings. All the bolts are tightened up, and we're ready for the rest of the winter. So thank you for watching. Hopefully this will help you out. If you don't already know what you're doing with the snowblower, this will maybe clue you in a little bit more on what I've learned as well. So thank you very much, and have a good winter.